First, you're going to draw your monster within the rectangle. Make sure that you stay away from the edges of the rectangle when you do this. Shade in the parts that you want to be black and leave white the parts that you want to stay white. Here I have a needle with thread pulled all the way through the needle to the very end, and that's where the edges of the thread are. I'm going to tie a knot in the end of the threads. If you feel like you need a bigger knot, or if it pulls through your paper too easily, try to tie another knot right on top of it. You want to bring the needle up, and I kind of drag it along the back of the paper, and then I go ahead and poke it up through where I think my black line might be. You can see it took me like 4 pokes there to figure out the right spot. I'm gonna go ahead and go up, and I am tracing the lines. So I'm gonna poke back down on the end of the black line, all the way through. Pull tight. Then find that next spot. Whoops, see, it takes a little practice. Don't push it all the way through until you're sure that you're on that black line. This is gonna teach you guys how to do what we call a basic running stitch. Now on the back, notice, see how I didn't pull it all the way through? Now that I've done a few stitches, I can go ahead and pull that tight and the knot will hold. So my next stitch, kind of figure out where that goes. Oops, a little early. Right about there. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you do have to be on the line, okay? What I'm gonna do is I'm going to sew all of the way to the end, and then I'm gonna knot it on the back. Okay guys, this is what the last stitch looks like on this row. I'm gonna go ahead and push down through the paper and then flip over my paper and pull my needle through. And then to knot it, the easiest way to do this is to just make a big circle and to bring the needle under and up through the loop. And then as you pull, work it so that the knot is going to be down by the paper. Hold it with your finger and pull it through. Then you're just gonna snip it and then rethread your needle with another desk length of thread so that you can go ahead and sew across the bottom row of stitches. Here's another way to tie a knot in your thread. First, thread the needle. Pull it all the way through so that the ends are together. And this is kind of cool. You can make a circle and pinch the ends, then wrap the thread around the needle 3 times, pinch the end of that, and slide it through. This one takes a little bit more practice, but it's pretty cool. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and leave my knot on the back, and bring the needle up. Pull it tight. As you can see, I've completed both lines of stitching. Here's the back, here's the front, so you can see how it looks. Once you have completed all of these steps and finished with your stitch, that's when you have permission to go ahead and move on to cutting out your pattern pieces and putting them on the felt. Okay, so as you can see, we have the mouth pinned down, the eyes are pinned down, and I also have to get each of the teeth pinned down to the white. That way I'll be able to use my scissors and to cut around them. It might be good to cut just a tiny bit bigger than your pattern pieces at this step. You can always trim them shorter or smaller, but you can't add fabric back if you accidentally cut it off. Now I realize that part of my eyeballs here are gonna be black. So first I'm cutting out the white part, and then what I'll do in this situation is cut the black off my pattern piece, and I'll transfer that over to my black felt and pin it on. And then that black piece, I can go ahead and cut off as well. And you'll see kind of the stages come together that it's going to take when you hand sew this, because you're going to have to attach the black to the white like so, keeping in mind, you know, how your picture looked. So you can see I'm going to have to attach the black to the white before I attach the whole thing to my pillow. And I might cut those teeth just a little bit larger, because remember, I'm going to have to attach them to the black mouth. As you can see, I have all of my pieces cut out. So what I can start to do is put them on kind of where I want to sew them, so that I can see how that's going to end up looking. You can kind of see the monster's going to start to come together right in front of your eyes, and you can play with it a little bit. You know, the goal is to make something that matches what you drew, but if at this stage you find something that you like better, you know, look at that. See that little black part? I need to cut that off so that it fits better. I can go ahead and do stuff like this at this stage. Now the teeth, I actually cut them just a little bit bigger than my pattern pieces, because as you can see, I don't want to sew them on like this because that looks kind of silly. I want to end up sewing them so that they'll be on the back. So a little bit of that room on the back is just going to make it go on quite a bit easier. So I might start to plan how all these things are going to go together and adjust where I want them to be so that I'm happy with my monster. Okay, so as you can see, I now have pinned the pupil to the white on each, and I've pinned the teeth to the black. So when I flip those over, you see that there's some overlap on the back. And I just wanted to take a minute and lay it out on the yellow piece of felt that I'm going to stitch it to, because I wanted to get a feel for what it's going to look like. So you can play with it a little bit. You can move your eyes in a little closer. You can take them out a little bit further. You could even, look at that, there's a one-eyed one. Look at this. You can have a lot of fun. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up like the eyeball. I've got my needle with a little bit of thread and a knot on the end. And I'm just going to go ahead and do a quick running stitch. I'm coming up through the back here, and I'm going to do a quick running stitch around, maybe 5 or 6 stitches total, just to make sure that the pupil is attached to the white. If you want your stitches to stand out on this stage, then you could go ahead and sew with white. But I don't really want anybody to see these stitches. They're just there for, like I said, security purposes, making sure everything stays attached at this stage. So I made it all the way around, and then I'm gonna go ahead and tie off the back. Once again, make a loop, sew through it, put your finger on the knot, and pull it down. I'm gonna go ahead and cut and trim those threads so nobody can see them. And now remove my pin, and the black is attached. You can see on the back there's the stitches. So that will be ready for me to sew all the way around. I'm gonna go ahead and finish this eye, and I'm gonna go ahead and sew on the teeth just by sewing through the black here and sewing through the black here, making sure that I capture both of the teeth in my stitches. Once I have that done, I can make a choice on if I'm gonna stuff part of my monster. Am I going to put some stuffing behind his eyes to make him puff out? Am I going to stuff behind his teeth to make them puff out? Or am I just going to be happy with it being flat? I went ahead and started my stitch on the back side with a knot and sewed across and back and ended with a knot. It is important that whatever you attach is firmly secured on. You'll have to go ahead and get another desk's width of thread. You'll probably do this several times for the next few stages. You might also want to secure what you're sewing with a few straight pins. And so you'll want to come in here and stab them in the eye, kind of bend the pin up a little bit, force it to come back through when you're happy with your positioning of where things are. That way, as you're sewing, it'll all stay connected. Okay, so I started my stitching on the back with a knot, and now you can see I've been making stitches all the way around. Now when you first bring your needle through, if it's in the wrong spot, adjust a little bit at a time until you find the spot that you're happy with. Now when you're sewing the detail pieces on, You should make really careful, small stitches and be happy with each one before you push it all of the way through to the back. Now, as you're doing this, if it gets hung up on something, like see this pin right here, it's possible that as you're pulling it through, that string might catch it. If that happens, just be patient and uncatch it, and then finish pulling your stitch through. Make sure you pull it through so that they're tight all the way around. I'm gonna finish this eye, then sew on the other one, then switch to the mouth. You can see that I sewed in a circle, made a knot. Now I'm gonna cut my thread, re-knot, and move to the second eyeball. Both eyes are sewn on. You can see that I'm keeping them well away from the edge. This is the back. You can see where the eyes are attached, and you can see where I've been attaching the mouth. And I want to point out that I don't have a whole lot of thread left to get all the way back across on a second line of stitching. If this happens, you can't sew till you only have a tiny bit of string left, or you won't be able to make a knot. So whenever you have about this much left, that's maybe 4 inches or so of string, it's wise to tie it in a knot, cut, rethread, and continue. So one side will be the back and one the front. And so you're going to want to line these up and then go ahead and pin all the way around the perimeter of your pillow. I have my monster all of the way pinned around the perimeter. And I just want to show you, it can look perfectly good from this side, but when you flip it over, you can see that maybe the edges aren't exactly perfect. This is a good time to take your shears and go ahead and trim it so that it is perfect. Okay, I'm zooming in just on the corner so you can see where I started my stitching on the back with a knot. Whoops, you can see one stitch got a little not quite perfect, is it? Yet from the front, it looks really good. So as you're sewing, try to be aware of that and try to make it look both good on the front and the back. It's also really important to notice that you are sewing through both layers. If your edges aren't even, you might miss one of them. Okay, so I've sewn all of the way around the perimeter up to this point. And as you can see, I'm getting short on thread. I'm gonna go ahead, I barely have enough thread there to tie a knot. Now maybe I don't want my knot on the outside. Let's think about that for a minute. I already put it there and it's a good knot, but I'm gonna show you a different way. Like maybe I can pull that just a little bit and now the knot's on the inside, trapped between the layers. See that? Okay, I have threaded another needle, got a knot at the end ready to go. This time, instead of coming through on the back, I'm gonna open it up and make my first stitch so that the knot is going to be trapped on the inside. I've sewn all the way around my monster and I want to keep my string attached. I just want it to be out of the way. So I'm just going to take my needle and push it through the side so that it's over here and not going to bother me while I do this next step. Break off a little piece of stuffing at a time. That's what you're actually going to work inside. One more thing to think about, the more full you stuff them, the more difficult it's going to be to pull this tight and sew across. All right, I'm going to take these last few stitches and notice I have to really kind of pull these together. I'm going to do one more quick small stitch here. So on the existing stitch once or twice just to continue the stitch down a little bit further. Now I'm on the back here. I'm going to come up between them. And that's where I want to try to leave my knot so that I don't have a visible knot. So big loop, pull it through, hold that down as you pull, and hopefully that knot won't be very visible. We'll trim it, maybe push it in a little bit there, and here we go. We have our completed monster. You might have to fluff him up a little bit